for joining today's class. Thank you, Prabhu. Today we'll be reading Canto 1, Chapter 16, verse 32 and 33. Brahmadaya bahutitam yadapangamoksha. Brahmadaya bahutitam yadapangamoksha. Kamastapa samacharam bhavat prapanna. स श्रीस्ववासमरविन्दवनं विहाय यत्पादसौभगमलं भजते नुरुक्त तस्याहमब्जकुलिशङ्कुशकेतुकेतैः श्रीमत्पदैर्भगवतः समलङ्कृताङ्गी प्रीणात्यो रच उपलभ्य ततो विभूतिम् लोकान् समां व्यसृजेत् उत्समयतीं तदन्ते ब्रह्मादयो बहुति. Yes, bro. Word to word. Okay, translation. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lakshmi ji, the goddess of fortune, whose glance of grace was sought by demigods like Brahma and for whom they surrendered many a day unto the personality of Godhead, gave up her own abode in the forest of lotus flowers and engaged herself in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. I was endowed with specific powers to supersede the fortune of all the three planetary systems by being decorated with the impressions of the flag, thunderbolt, elephant driving rod, and lotus flower, which are signs of the lotus feet of the Lord. But at the end, when I felt I was so fortunate, the Lord left me. Purport. The beauty and opulence of the world can be enhanced by the grace of the Lord and not by any man-made planning. When the Lord Sri Krishna was present on this earth, the impressions of the special signs of his lotus feet were stamped on the dust, and as a result of this specific grace, the whole earth was made as perfect as possible. In other words, the rivers, the seas, the forests, the hills, and the mines, which are supplying agents for necessities of men and animals, were fully discharging their respective duties. Therefore, the riches of the world surpassed all the riches of all other planets in the three planetary systems of the universe. One should therefore ask that the grace of the Lord always be present on earth, so that we may be favored by his causeless mercy and be happy, having all necessities of life. One may ask how we can detain the Supreme Lord on this earth after his mission is fulfilled and he has left this earth for his own abode. The answer is that there is no need to detain the Lord. The Lord, being omnipresent, can be present with us if we want him at all. By his omnipresence, he can always be with us if we are attached to his devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. There is nothing in the world with which the Lord is disconnected. The only thing we must learn is to excavate the source of connection and thus be linked with him by offenseless service. We can be connected with him by the transcendental sound representation of the Lord. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical, and one who chants the holy name of the Lord in an offenseless manner can at once realize that the Lord is present before him. Even by the vibration of radio sound, we can partially realize sound relativity. And by resounding sound of transcendence, we can verily feel the presence of the Lord. In this age, when everything is polluted by the contamination of Kali, it is instructed in the scriptures and preached by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that by chanting the holy name of the Lord, we can at once be free from contamination and gradually rise to the status of transcendence and go back to Godhead. The offenseless chanter of the holy name of the Lord is as auspicious as the Lord himself, and the movement of pure devotees of the Lord all over the world can at once change the troublesome face of the world. Only by propagation of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord can we be immune from all effects of the age of Kali. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. In today's verse and purport, Srila Prabhupada is laying a lot of emphasis on the chanting of the holy names of the Lord and also remembering the lotus feet of the Lord. The last verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam is known to condense or have the summary study of everything that the entire Srimad Bhagavatam has. So it's considered as the condensed verse, which has the summary of what all the topics and all the conclusions of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the last verse actually involves both of these concepts of the lotus feet of the Lord and also the chanting of the holy names that Prabhupada touches upon here. So the last verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam is Nama Sankirtana Yasya Sarva Papa Pranashanam Pranamo Dukkha Shamanas Tam Namami Harim Param. So the last verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam tells there are only two things that you need to know. Even if you have read the entire Srimad Bhagavatam and have for some reason forgotten everything else, you only need these two things, that is Nam and Pranam. Having the holy name of the Lord and offering obeisances to the deities, to the Guru, and to all the Gurujanas. These are the only two ingredients that are required for one to go back home, back to Godhead. And that's the same emphasis that Prabhupada is laying here, that only by the propagation of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord can we become immune from all the effects of the age of Kali. And Prabhupada is also saying that he is omnipresent. He can always be with us if we are attached to his devotional service by hearing, chanting, and remembering. Now, here we are talking about Bhumi Devi, who felt she was most fortunate when the Lord was on the planet. And there are several pastimes where the Lord specifically plays with or shows mercy towards Bhumi Devi. And the most prominent of them all would be when when Krishna accepts the prasadam of Bhumi Devi. He accepts the mud and eats it. And he, in a very childlike, playful manner, we see that, as Vijay Prabhu mentioned in a recent class, that all the friends and Balram, they complain to Mother Yashoda that Krishna is eating the dirt, and he actually negates it. He says, no, they're lying. They have a conspiracy against me, and they have some kind of negative affliction towards me, and as a result, they're lying. That's what Krishna says. And then Mother Yashoda asks, even Balram? And Krishna is caught unawares because he cannot lie against Balram, who's his elder brother. And but at this point, he didn't want to be caught in that lie. So he goes ahead with it and says, yes, even Balram, he's also telling a lie. And then Mother Yashoda asks him to open his mouth, and then we see that, and Mother Yashoda sees the entire planetary systems, and she sees herself in it. And Hari Suri comments on this verse, saying that Krishna showed the entire planetary system to his mother because it is the duty of the son to not hide anything from his mother, and as a result, he has to show everything without holding anything back. As a result, because he consumed one of his mothers, which is considered as Dhara, he consumed her, and his mother, who's part of the Leela, is asking him to show what he truly is, what he truly has within him. As a result, when he opened his mouth, he could have shown just the mud, or he could have shown an empty mouth, but he chose to show everything that's within, because everything's within Krishna, and and Krishna is also all pervading. He's simultaneously both. Everything resides within him, and he resides infinitely, covering the entire planetary system. And that's actually one of the signs on his lotus feet, which we will look at today. Now, when we're talking about Krishna's lotus feet, we need to know that there are 19 symbols on his lotus feet. And Prabhupada lays a lot of emphasis on hearing, chanting, and remembering. So I thought it would be most appropriate or most pertinent to discuss about the 19 symbols on Krishna's lotus feet. And then we can see what we can take from each, just small pointers on each, and then we can delve a little bit deeper. But before that, there are a few themes that the entire Srimad Bhagavatam has, where the Lord's lotus feet is the shelter for everybody. Sometimes it is the boat. Sometimes everybody just wants the lotus feet of the Lord. But why exactly is it called the lotus feet? There are a lot of flowers in the entire flora and fauna, in the entire flora that Krishna has created. But why specifically the lotus flower? Why is it lotus feet and not maybe chrysanthemum feet or something like that? And there are several reasons that commentators give, and the most prominent among them is that the lotus, even though it is in the water, not a drop of water can stay on the lotus flower. It would. So there's also this song that one of the acharyas say that Jeevana Dalamala. Dalamala Bhajaru Haripade Nitire. So it says that the life of a human being is like that drop on the dewdrop that is on the lotus flower, and then the lotus leaf or lotus flower would drop the water droplet at any point in time. It wouldn't absorb it, rather it would stay on top, and then the water droplet will fall off. So the human life is like that. It can fall off at any point in time. So there is a call to action that we must be more serious in our spiritual life. But the reason Krishna's lotus feet is called lotus feet is because he may be surrounded by maybe all of our anarthas, and maybe in the Kali Yuga on the earth with a lot of malice towards him and so on. But he's never affected by all of that. And he's also called the lotus feet. His feet are called lotus feet because they're very soft and they're the shelter for everybody. Further, there are many acharyas who comment that Krishna's lotus feet is similar. Is called lotus because the bee, and they're compared to the gopis, the bee would sometimes find itself in the whorls of the lotus flower, and it is protected from the sunshine by the big, you could say, petals of the lotus flower, and it can absorb all of the nectar that's within. And then sometimes the bee is actually intoxicated to the extent and filled its belly completely with the nectar of the lotus flower that it's unable to move, and it's also very sleepy, and it just stays there and takes rest in the lotus flower. And in the evening, when the lotus bud closes itself, the bee is stuck in there. And the acharyas comment that the gopis and all of the pure devotees of the Lord are like that bee, or should strive to be like that bee, who are willing to accept the nectar that the Srimad Bhagavatam and all of the different pastimes of the Lord have, so that they can also be intoxicated like that bee and take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Because the Shastras give us protection from all of the Kali Yuga. So we see that only by the propagation of the chanting of the holy name can we be immune from all the effects of the age of Kali. So the lotus flower, which gives us shade from the sunlight, from the scorching heat of the sunlight, and also gives us nourishment in the form of the nectarian Srimad Bhagavatam, when we accept it and we are willing to be intoxicated by it, maddened by it, then the Unmad, or whatever name we can call it, only then will we get the full shelter of the Lord. When the lotus flower closes, then we know that the Lord has accepted us. And so we will, given this theme and trying to meditate on this, we will look at the different symbols on the lotus feet of the Lord. But before that, there's also one prayer that Kulashekara Alvar sings to the Lord, and Srila Prabhupada quotes in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Kulashekara Alvar says, Krishna tvadiya pada pankaja panjarantam adyaiva me vishatu manasa raja hamsa prana prayana samaye kafavata pittaihi kantha vidau smaranam kutaste. So he says, Krishna, please accept me and entangle me in the lotus feet with the stem of the lotus, so that I'm always there. And Kulashekara Alvar is offering himself to the Lord when his mind is actually in a good place. So we see many sports persons, they try to retire at their peak in their career when they win some important championship and they're closing on to their age of retirement. They try to finish off on a high. Similarly, Kulashekara Alvar is trying to finish off when he's at his best consciousness. So he's saying, Krishna, when I'm towards my deathbed, kapha, vata, pitta, these three afflictions may cloud my consciousness. I may not be able to remember you with the same level of love and devotion that I'm remembering you right now, because that time I may be in some sort of pain or discomfort, and they may actually supersede any of the devotion that I may have for you. So please accept me now. So he says, Krishna Turiya Manasaraja, Prana Prayana Samaye Kafavata Pittahi Kanthavaro Dhanavidau Smaranam Kutaste. Right now, I can sing your glories, Kanthavaravidau Smaranam Kutaste. And I can remember you right now. So please accept me at this point in time. And this goes to show, again, the same metaphor that is a running theme towards the entire, not just the Bhagavatam, but almost every Purana, everything out there about the lotus feet of the Lord. And in the 11th canto, there is another beautiful representation of Krishna's lotus feet. And that is further enhanced. The metaphors enhanced by Kulashekara Alvar. So we have this verse that says, Nirdeha madhyam sulabam sudurlabam plabam sukalpam guru karnadharam mayanukulena na nabha swateritam puman bhavabde na taretsa atmaha. So this is part of the, you could say, Uddhav Geet. And there in the chapter, which is called Pure Devotional Service, Krishna talks about what a person who commits spiritual suicide looks like. So he talks about how Nirdeha madhyam sulabam sudurlabam. The human being, human form of life has received, you have received the human form of life after immense, many years or many lifetimes, because it's very rare to get the human form of life. So you have already attained it. Sulabam sudurlabam, plabam sukalpam guru karnadharam. So you have the boat, and then you also have the captain of the ship, who's your guru, karnadharam. Mayanukulena na nabha swateritam. The different shastras that you have access to, they're like the favorable winds pushing you towards your goal. So you have the boat, you have the captain of the boat, and you have the human form of life, which is the boat itself. And then you have favorable winds that are shastras pushing you towards the spiritual realm and to cross over the Vaitaranya river. And then, yet, having all of these advantages, if you're still unable to attain the lotus feet of the Lord, na taretsa atmaha, what can be said for you? Because you have every advantage, everything that anybody would ever aspire for, and yet you are unable to make it to the end. So that he considered that to be spiritual suicide. And Kulashekara Alvar expands on this verse, and he says, Trishna toye madana pavano dhuta mohormi male dara varte sahajataneya graha sangha kulecha samsara ke mahati jaladau majjatam nastri dhaman padam bhoje bhavati jaladau bhakti navam prayacha. So he asks the Lord for one wish, and he gives an explanation of why that wish is the best wish he could have asked for. So he draws a picture, or you can say a portrait of what the material world looks like. So he says, Madana Pavana Dhuta. So Madan is Cupid and Pavan is the winds. Dhuta Mohormi Male. So he's talking about how the human form of life is afflicted by the waves of Madan. That is Cupid. That is basically lust. So Dara Varte Sahajatanya Graha Sangha Kulecha. Dara is wife. And then Sahaja is friends, family members. So all of them are compared to a school of sharks. Dara Varte Sahaja Tanaya. Tanaya is blood relatives. Tanaya. Graha Sangha Kulecha. They're like a sang, they're like a group or a school of sharks. So he's saying he's in Mahati Jaladhau. Mahati is a large, Jaladhau is a very large ocean. So this is the Vaitaranya, that is the large ocean of material existence. And he's saying he's afflicted by the waves of lust, and he's, you could say, chewed over by the sharks that include his wife, his friends, family members, and blood relatives. And he also says, Majjatam na Stridhaman. He's saying, I'm drowning. Majjatam is drowning in this. And Stridhaman is the Lord of the three worlds. He's saying, he's praying to the Lord, and he's saying that all of these things are, holding me back and they're pulling me away. Kulashekara Alvar was a king, and he actually had a very large, like a large family. And he was at this point of realization where he knew that the lotus feet of the Lord was the only source of emancipation at this point in time. And as a result, he's praying to the Lord. What is his prayer? He says, Graha Sangha Kulecha, Samsara ke mahati jalo majjatam na tridhaman, Padam bhoje bhavati jaladau bhakti navam prayacha. He says, Padam bhoje, give me the boat of your lotus feet that takes me from here to the final end. So these are all the metaphors for the lotus feet of the Lord. So let us look at what exactly are the signs on the lotus feet of the Lord, and why these 19 signs are things that we must meditate upon for our daily sadhana. So the first thing is on the right foot of the Lord. The first sign is the barley corn. So the barley corn is what you would say a grain which nourishes us. So we accept prasadam, especially grains, on non-Ekadashi days, because it nourishes our body and gives us sufficient energy. So the barley corn on the lotus feet of Krishna, on the right lotus feet of Krishna. So the right foot has 11 signs and the left foot has 8. So in total, they come to 19. And the first at the very top of the right foot is the barley corn, which talks about how the Supreme Lord nourishes and gives vitality to all of his devotees. So we see that, at least in the ashram, we try to attend Mangalarti every day. And there are many, you could say, motivational speakers who say that you don't need an alarm clock. Purpose is the best alarm clock, is what they say. And if we really have a purpose to get to Mangalarti, to have the darshan of the Lord in the morning, actually, our purpose to go to Mangalarti is not to have darshan of the Lord, is actually so that the merciful glance of the Lord falls upon us. So we go there for the Lord's mercy to fall upon us. And that is one of the purposes of our going to Mangalarti and having, us having some darshan and the Lord's mercy falling upon us. But the main point about the nourishment is the enthusiasm with which we do it, because there's a time in a devotee's life where all of these may start becoming the new normal, and then there's a loss of enthusiasm. So there's this beautiful book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. So Viktor Frankl was one of the doctors who was part of the concentration camps in Germany, and he studied how people around him behaved and how they handled the atrocities that they went through about the gassing and killing. And he made a very interesting point in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, where he mentions that the people actually did not die the time they were gassed in the chambers. They actually died at a different point in time. And he says they died at the point where they lost the enthusiasm for life. And at least for me, that seemed like a very important takeaway from that book, because we may lose all our freedoms. Like, whoever were in the concentration camp had already lost every ounce of freedom that they ever had. But there was only one freedom that they still had with them, and that was to be enthusiastic about life. And nobody can ever take the enthusiasm to live from anybody. That's exactly the realization that the Avanti Brahman has in the 11th canto, that mana eva manushyanam karana bandha mokshayo. He doesn't quote that, but he says that the mind alone is the cause of suffering and the cause of happiness for anybody. So if we fail to capitalize on the enthusiasm that we have for life, the freedom to have the enthusiasm for life, then we will not have any nourishment in our spiritual progress. So this is something I've been meditating upon, about how there will be a point in time where bhakti may seem a little boring, may seem like is just a part of life and not the heart of life. And in those are the circumstances when one must renew their enthusiasm for bhakti, for anything that's valuable to them, so that they can move forward in that practice. So the barley corn is about that freedom to be enthusiastic and also be nourished by the lotus feet of the Lord. The second thing that's on the feet of the Lord is the chakra. And the chakra shows two aspects. One is the chakra is to cut, that is to cut the 6 anarthas, the 6 primary anarthas that afflict the human form of life. And the other is the chakra also represents time, and it is in our best interest to become timeless, because I think in one of the classes by Keshav Swami Maharaj, he mentions that the reason why we must become timeless, and he says time, you can think of time in many different ways. You can think of time as just day to night, and then he also says time is something that takes you away from all the things you like. So that's a very interesting way he put it. So time is something that takes away everything that's dear to you, and one who realizes that everything that is around them is temporary and they're all fallible soldiers, one actually becomes detached from all of these things. So to further explain this point, I would like to talk about Alexander the Great. He was the world conqueror, Alexander the Great, and he was very proud of all of his conquering business. And he wanted to meet one of the sages in India. I think his name was Dandamis. I tried to find the reference for why his name was Dandamis, but the name doesn't matter. But he wanted to meet this Indian sage to get some, you could say, wisdom from him. So he had one little ounce of humility. So Alexander the Great went to India and to meet the sage. And as he comes in front of this hermitage of the sage, and he asks his soldiers to go and get the sage so that he can have darshan of the sage. And the soldiers go in, and the sage is in deep meditation, but they break his meditation and then say, Alexander the Great is outside your hermitage, outside your hut. So you really need to come and you need to meet him. So the sage Dandamis was unfazed by this, and he said, why should I come? He wants to meet me, so he should be coming inside. And all of the Alexander's men knew this was not the right thing to say to Alexander, but they hesitantly went back and told Alexander the Great that the sage said if he wants to see the sage, he should be coming inside and not the other way around. So then Alexander the Great was enraged because no one would ever talk to him like that. All of his soldiers were just yes men who would say yes to everything he says. They would never have an ounce of self-respect or anything like that. So now Alexander actually takes out his sword from its holster, and then he goes inside the hut. And then he stands in front of the sage and he asks, do you know who I am? And the sage sees the sword, sees Alexander the Great. He actually does not know who he is, perhaps, or he may know. But he looks at him and says, probably not, maybe. He looks at the Alexander and he says, I don't think even you know who you are. And that further increases Alexander's anger. And he takes the sword and places it on the neck of the sage and says, choose your words wisely. If you don't, I'm going to slice your head off. So he places his sword at the neck of the sage. And then the sage, then he tells him, I am Alexander the Great. He himself introduces him. I'm Alexander the Great, and I've conquered all the lands that you can see. So he introduces himself to the sage. And then the sage looks completely unfazed, looks at Alexander and tells him, you may have conquered all of these lands, but all you need is 2 meters by 1 meter, and you will only be able to take that much space after you leave this body. And Alexander was trying to process what was just said, because he's eventually going to die, and he's only going to take up maybe 180 centimeters by 50 centimeters and nothing more. So all of the land that he has ever conquered is of no use. And then I would just like to quote what was said. So he says, what good is your ambition or their remembrance, O king? You drown yourself in alcohol every evening, so you may forget about your crimes and sins. These men who surround you, they are tired of you. You will see it. They will give up on you one day, in fact, very soon. Besides, what will you do with the world? All you need is 2 yards long, 2 yards deep. Ultimately, that's all that will ever belong to you. That's just quoting what he told the sage. And then he tells Alexander. And finally, he says one of the most important things about anger. He says, you are the slave of something who I'm the master of. And he says, that's because you are the slave of your anger, but I have mastered anger. As a result, I am its master. So then Alexander the Great was humbled by a humble sage, and he was willing to take advice. He was just standing there and trying to process what just happened, because he was completely destroyed by a few words by an unfazed sage. And those were the words that cut through all of his pride, all of his false ego, anger, everything. It cut through and really reached. So that's exactly what Prabhupada is talking about, the strength of the sound vibration. It cuts through all of our coverings and gets through to the heart. And this is also demonstrated by the 16 layers that 16 layers of different gates that kept Vasudev Maharaj inside the jail. He had to go through the 16 gates, and it is compared to the 16 syllables that we have in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra about how it gets through within. So we've spoken about barley corn and chakra. We are only 2 done out of 19. So the third is the umbrella. Umbrella is what we would call poshana, or the protective capacity of the Lord. And we know that the biggest umbrella that the Lord used was Giri Govardhan, and he used it to protect all of the residents of Vrindavan using that. And there's a fun fact that I read recently that Krishna would be offered he would be offered bhoga 8 times a day. And for those 7 days, he did not honor any prasadam. So that's why 8 times 7 is 56. And we have the Chappan Bhogas, 56 items that are offered. And especially on the Govardhan.
56 to Jagannath?
Jagannath, yes. So 8 times 7 is 56. That's what Mother Yashoda wanted to offer him, but he did not have it during those 7 days. So also the umbrella shows that everything in this world are fallible soldiers. I could not spend enough time to remember the verse, but there's a verse that says we have 7 seeming protectors, but they're all fallible soldiers, and the Lord is your only protector. So Haridasa Varya. So the Govardhan is also a form of the Lord. So he's the only one who can give shelter and protection to everybody. So now we are 3. Lotus. We discussed a lot about the lotus, how the lotus feet of the Lord is soft and how it is our only protection. We can actually try to remember all of these symbols in the day-to-day activities that we are doing. Sometimes we may find a very comfortable bed, which is very soft, and we may just fall asleep there. That's exactly what we must do, but for the lotus feet of the Lord, because that's very soft. And if we actually are willing to give ourselves to him, he's willing to accept us. The 5th one is the flag, and the flag, similar to what was on Arjuna's chariot, which is the Kapi Dwaja, which had Hanuman on it, is a form of declaration. Like we have the white flag of surrender, or we have the flag of attack, flag of truce, and so many other flags. They're there to demonstrate or declare something. And the greatest declaration that Krishna does is Kaunteya Pratijanihi na me bhaktya pranashyati. So anytime we see anything similar to a flag or a decorator or anything that declares something, we can remember the declaration that Krishna has made, that none of my devotees will ever perish. Next, we come to the goad. So it is also in the translation about the elephant driving rod. So we know the mad elephant syndrome, about how if an elephant is allowed to go into a very delicate Japanese orchard, it would just completely destroy everything. And the elephant is compared to the mind, how the mind is the source, karana bandha mokshayo. It's the source for bandha, that's to get entangled in the material world. And also it is a suitable vehicle for mokshayo, for emancipation from this world. And the Supreme Lord is the only one who can help us control this elephant, because as Prabhu was discussing about different facets of anartha nivritti, it can be a lifelong process, and we can always try to, it's more like a defensive process. Like, in sport, just as a metaphor, offense is generally the best form of defense, because defense means you are trying not to lose, but offense means you're trying to win, actually trying to win. So similarly, for spiritual life, anartha nivritti is a defensive process. It's a process where you're trying to do neti neti, no, not this, not that. You're trying to stay away from anarthas that hold you back. So it's a defensive strategy. It's a strategy not to lose. But the greatest strategy that we can ever utilize in our spiritual life is artha pravritti. Artha pravritti is to utilize our life for pravritti, or for the positive that is required. So when we take initiation, there are 4 things that we say we don't do, and 1 thing that we say we will do. More than not doing those 4 things, I mean, we need to keep our works, but more than not doing those 4 things, doing that 1 thing really well, the pravritti, the chanting of the 16 rounds very well, that alone is sufficient to negate the taste for any of these 4 things. So the acharyas always comment that artha pravritti is always it's a much better strategy than just anartha nivritti. And artha pravritti automatically causes the destruction of all of our anarthas and pulls us through anartha nivritti. So when we talk about the Krishna being the only shelter and Krishna being the only one who can control the mind, it is only by our artha pravritti or attaching ourselves to him will all of these be destroyed. Then we speak about the thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is the vajra that you could say Indra Indra possesses it, but it's also the strength which gives us even more confidence that Goptritve Varnam Tata. He would be our protector because of the strength that Krishna has. Then there's an important symbol called octagon, which is an 8-sided figure, as you would all know. And octagon on Krishna's lotus feet represents the 8 directions, which may seem inaccessible to everybody. But once anybody has taken the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, all the 8 directions become accessible to them. And there's nothing that is impossible for a devotee. And just one point I wanted to make on that was what Vashisht Maharaj was saying, that he was quoting Prabhupada and saying that with the instruction of the spiritual master comes the blessing or the empowerment to fulfill it. And many times devotees have seen they've been able to do things that they never thought was possible for them. It was only by the empowerment of the Guru and the Supreme Lord. So the octagon represents that accessibility to conquer everything in the 8 directions. Then there is the swastika. The swastika is supposed to mean su plus astika. Su is good, astika is being. Asti means it is or it being, and su means well-being. So by taking the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, our well-being is guaranteed. You don't have to mention that. And the 11th one on the right foot of the Lord is the rose apple, or it's called the Jambu Phala. The rose apple, it's called the Jambu Phala because we are residents of Jambudvip, and that is the dhara or the bhumi that we will inherit. So that is what the rose apple or the Jambu Phala on the right foot of the Lord represents. So we have completed 11, which is on the right foot of the Lord. So there are 8 more on the left foot. So I will just cover whatever important points I have. So on the very top of the left foot of the Lord is the conch shell, and the conch shell. When anyone blows the conch shell, it is to blow away any of the inauspiciousness that is present. So if you would have all noticed that the first thing before any of the aartis begin is to blow the conch shell, and it's to remove all inauspiciousness so that the auspicious activity takes precedent in that point in time. So the lotus feet of the Lord has a conch shell to show that anyone who takes shelter of this or meditates on his lotus feet, the conch shell removes all of the inauspiciousness on their feet. The next is very interesting because there are 2 concentric circles on the lotus feet of the Lord. And it's very interesting what it represents, because it represents the same mood that Prahlad Maharaj had, because he knew that Krishna was within and also everywhere else. So that's the infinitude of the Lord. And it's similar to how we have it is exactly the Paramatma within, but also Krishna manifesting himself everywhere else. Because sometimes we lose track of the main thing, that everything that we ever encounter in this world are by the mercy of the Lord. It is not a random event that all materialists call probabilistic event that happens. There's a probability for a certain event, it can happen, and so on. But actually, it's the Supreme Lord who has personally hand stamped and allocated to you whatever, every circumstance that we come across. Because Krishna is not going to say that the stars or the zodiac signs or all of those are more powerful than him. And if they want the karma to come in a certain way, Krishna cannot intervene or something like that. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. He's beyond all of them. So if something comes upon us, whether it's happiness or whether it's distress, it has been hand approved by Krishna that this devotee must go through this. Whether they learn from it, grow from it, or how they go through it, that's on the devotee. But it is, if we are able to see everything as the hand of the Lord, then we'll be more willing to accept his shelter. The next is the bow and arrow. So this talks about, there's a quote that says, one who conquers himself conquers. So there's I don't know the Spanish way to say it. It's some Vinci, Vinci or something like that. It means one who conquers himself is the only one who can conquer, and the bow and arrow represent that conquering. Because as I was talking about Alexander the Great, I wanted to touch upon both of the things. His pride always held him back, but because he conquered everything outside, but not what was within. So that was the main reason I want to talk about Alexander in that point. Then there's the hoof print of a calf that's on the lotus feet of the Lord. And the hoof print, as we know, Samashadaya Padapallava Mahat Padam Punyayasho Murare Bhavam Buddhir Vatsapadam Param Padam Yat Vipadam Natesham. So in the Lord Brahma's prayers, he talks about how one who takes the shelter of the Lord, all of their everything that is afflicting them becomes equivalent to the amount of water that's in the hoof print of a calf. If all of you have gone to different farms in the Bay Area, and you would know how small the hoof print of a calf is, and the amount of water that's contained there is very minuscule. And Lord Brahma is saying that all of our sufferings and everything that may be afflicting us is equivalent to the amount of water that's on the hoof print, and the hoof print is on the lotus feet of Krishna to remind us of this fact. Then there's a triangle that's on the lotus feet of the Lord, and the triangle represents it has many things that have three. That's the three modes. Then there's the body, mind, and words. There is the threefold miseries, and all of these, whatever have three in them, all of these can be conquered if we take the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Then there's the half crescent moon, which represents the cooling moonbeams of mercy that comes from the Lord. Then there's the water pot, or you could call Kamandalu. We always see Kautakarna Prabhu carrying the water pot with him wherever he goes, the green water bottle. We see many devotees having with them. And it is expected that a Brahmana has access to the water to purify themselves 3 times a day. And this water pot actually contains nectar, and it is the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord, and that is what the Acharyas comment. And the final thing is fish, and we know fish always swim in water, and Krishna is trying to help us meditate on the fact that our heart should not be dry with philosophy, or dry with offenses toward other devotees. He wants it to be wet with the rasas, the different interactions with the Lord's pastimes and also the devotees. It should be luscious with that. So that is the meaning of the fish that is on the left foot of Krishna. So we are over time, and I'm surprised that I was able to list and cover all of the 19 symbols on the lotus feet of the Lord. I hope this is a good meditation for everybody, and I would like to stop here. Thank you very much, dear devotees. Hare Krishna.
So that's according to the charts on these examples you gave?
Yes, bro. Yes. Yeah, many. I also heard a couple of classes. Radhesham Prabhu talks about some of them, and Swayam Bhagwan Maharaj talks about some of them.
Right.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
It's similar pastime with not going and seeing the politician. It's in the Juhu story. There was like some big politician in Mumbai, and Prabhupada was saying he needs to come to me. And then Prabhupada refused to go see him. And the devotees were actually trying to bring him. And Prabhupada was trying to make the point that it's not that I go see a politician is supposed to come to me. Yeah. Of course, Prabhupada would also go meet them sometimes, but he was trying to teach them that.
Thank you for sharing that, bro. I haven't read the Juhu story.